This is an 8-iron, and it's a dead shank.
Wow.
Way right.
Oh, takes a hop
shank.
off the path.
You got to be kidding me. Very tough pitch shot right here. You got to hit it into the hill. One hop up and bite, and it's in.
Kind of like that.
Well, I'd like to welcome a friend of the podcast, PBA Hall of Fame member, winner of 13 tour events, including the major championship at the PBA National, analyst for Fox Sports covering the PBA Tour, Randy Pedersen. Randy, it is a pleasure to have you on this podcast finally.
What's up, Jay?
How was that for an intro? Was that was that plenty good for all of the accolades in Hall of Fame and majors?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Let's go.
Yeah, right. Well, we had to throw all the good stuff in on the front end, so, gotta let you know, everyone, what you've accomplished out there. It's impressive. Well, first off, how are you doing? Are you and your family healthy, all that good stuff? And what are you doing with the downtime there in Florida?
Well, me and my family are doing great since I'm divorced. It's just me. I'm doing fine. My kids are healthy. They're fine. They're out of work like a lot of other people. So, they're just hanging in there, and we're just kind of waiting for the word. Luckily for me, the golf course, our club, the private club that we belong to, Orange Tree, is still open, and I have my own private golf cart. So, we're still able to play Tuesday through Sunday. Of course, it's closed on Monday for, maintenance and whatnot. So, and then Monday is usually the day that I get all my stuff done, around the house and, any other work that I have to do. But yeah, so luckily we're still open. I still get to play golf if I want. But other than that, man, just trying to wait it out and see when when we're going to get this thing lifted so we can go back to work.
Any indication when the PBA will be back?
Yeah, none. I heard some rumblings about possibly June, but honestly, nothing concrete right now. The only scheduled stuff we have is in July, and that would be Portland, Maine on Fox, and then CBS Sports Network in Boston right after that. So
who knows, right? It's a moving target dealing with here.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely.
I was also going to ask you, I know you have a new project kind of going out under the website of www.randypedersen.com, where you're kind of working with some students. They get to spend some one-on-one time with you to improve their bowling game. How did that go? How's it going? How excited are you to kind of get to work with some of these students and try to make them better bowlers?
Well, I mean, the timing was horrible, obviously, because we came out with this just like probably a month or a couple of weeks prior to the shutdown. But yeah, it's randypedersen.com, Pedersen. My last name is spelled different. Basically upload videos of your game, and then I use an app. I go in and critique. Basically do an online lesson, send it back to the end user. They pay a fee for that, and basically it's an instructional website. There's also some stuff on the website, some lessons that are already on there, pictures that I take from tour events and whatnot and post, and some private interviews that I've done on my own with some of the players that kind of behind the scenes stuff. And so yeah, it was going nice, and then all of a sudden we got shut down, and then all the bowling centers closed. Nobody can send me any videos of themselves, and so just kind of put a damper on things. But hopefully it'll ramp up when we get back to work. Everybody will be kind of chomping at the bit to get back to bowling. Centers will open, people will get back, and then hopefully they'll need some help with their games, and it'll kind of open up the floodgates for that.
Do you get more excited working with beginners or higher handicap bowlers, or is it fun for you to work with the really elite trying to get to that next level where they're already really, really good and they're trying to get, crazy good? Do you have a sweet spot that you personally kind of enjoy a little bit more one way or the other, or is it kind of across the spectrum?
Honestly, it's like kind of mid handicappers and up. The beginning bowlers I'm not great with, honestly. I think my brain sees too much stuff that needs to happen. And I think that's obviously a bigger process. So it's like, all right, well, let's see. A beginning bowler, you got to start here. Let's start with the basics and start here, then start there. And then it's like, okay, well, here's your first lesson. Let's see where you get to from here. And then here's the next one, and so on and so forth. Whereas, the better players, they're much easier to work with. You've got something to work with when you go to those instructions, and it's much easier to kind of pinpoint what areas they need to work on. And so, yeah, I'd much rather prefer that mid-range to higher-end player.
Before the pandemic crisis here, the season was really exciting on the PBA Tour. Jason Belmonte, incredible what he's accomplished. Talk about in just kind of in sport in general. Maybe a lot of people who listen to podcast golfers and don't bowling as much as they watch golf, of explaining the level that Jason is at and the accomplishment of what he's in your game, and maybe kind of expand upon that a little bit. Is he ever that's ever laced him up?
Well, I'll tell you what, he sure is the best ever in major championship history. The guy's amazing. And if you think about the amount of tournaments that he bowls a year, given the schedule that we have nowadays, he doesn't bowl a lot of tournaments. And he's going to be player of the year again this year. So that would be what, like 5 out of the last 6 years. I think that says it all there. I said it before, when he's firing on all cylinders, he's so much better than everybody else. He's our Tiger Woods. There's no doubt about it. And, the guy's amazing. He really is. He's just filthy. And I think the bigger question is, like, when's he going to get tired of it? When's he going to say, all right, I've had enough. This has been fun. Guys, I'm going to stay in Oz, as he calls Australia, and you guys have fun.
Yeah, it's to have life, right? Like, that is, it's crazy of the run he's been on. Do you think, is it, and this is coming from my question of being a level bowler, is it physically is he that much better, or is it mental, or is it a combination of both? Like when you say he's the Tiger Woods, Tiger physical skills, but boy, his mind was, he just never made the wrong play at the wrong time. Does Jason have some of those same characteristics?
Oh, I think there's no doubt about it. It's a combination of both. This guy knows how to play, and then his physical game, he's got probably the second strongest bowling ball on tour, and behind Jesper Svensson, who's a two-handed lefty from Sweden. I think it has to be a combination of the two. You could have the greatest swing on the planet, but if you can't plot your way around, it really doesn't matter, does it? So, that's what makes Tiger so great, and I think that's what makes Belmonte so great.
I'm going to ask you guys, too, you were the last, if I remember this right, or if I have it right, you were the last live sporting kind of telecast that all of us who love watching sports that was on before the whole thing got shut down. When you were working for Fox and you knew there was going to be, assuming there had to be ratings increase like there was no tomorrow. I mean, it was a major, Belmonte was there. What kind of increase did you guys get viewership, and then was there a little additional pressure on you guys to make sure the broadcast came off seamlessly with that many eyeballs? I'm assuming that was on that telecast.
Well, I mean, there's always pressure on every live telecast for me. I mean, that's what makes it fun. But There was no Rob Stone. Fox put the kibosh on any of their announcers going out in the field, so they flew in Dave Ryan last second. They put a podium down lane. They had Norm Duke sit in with us for the show. There was no fans in the stands. I mean, it was. I've never done it in 20 years. I've never done a show like that, and it was so surreal. And but yet, when you're in the booth, you're just calling the action, right? And I mean, to watch this dude do what he did once again and for the very first time ever, having his entire family there watching him win and watching him win another major was pretty surreal.
I was going to ask you too, before we get into some golf talk, but on your bowling career, how did you get into bowling, and then when did you realize you were good enough that being a professional was a realistic option with the talent you had? In other words, when did you realize that I can probably compete with the best in the world?
Well, back in the day, I was California State junior champion. I'd won just about everything you could win in Southern California. And so that was, I was too poor and stupid to go to college. So the next progression was to move out onto the PBA tour. And, and then I got my teeth kicked in for about 4 or 5 years. And then in 1986, I won the very first tournament of the year. And that was kind of the springboard to my career. But I mean, it's like anything else, any other sport. I mean, you start when you're young and you've got some talent, you're winning junior events and you're winning this and winning that. And then you kind of move up the ranks. And that's kind of the same way it was for me.
I always like talking to the guys in the European Tour about just from the 80s when they were out there. But when you got on the PBA Tour, I'm assuming there had to be some characters back then. There's got to be some great stories. And the other question up with this is, do guys gamble like golfers on the PBA Tour to stay sharp when you guys are practicing? Is there the same sort of kind that happens in golf out there and when you're playing professional bowling?
Yeah, so in terms of the characters, I mean, I grew up with Pete Weber. I mean, Pete Weber's first year was the year before mine, and he was Rookie of the year before me, and then his ex-tour roommate, Mark Fahey, was Rookie of the Year the following year, and those two roomed together. Fahey was an ex-Golden Glove boxer from Chicago. The guy was an animal. And
I can picture where this is going.
There was some gambling on and off the lanes. I mean, as a kid, you don't when you're not really introduced to that kind of stuff, and then you get on tour, and all of a sudden you're kind of thrown into this mix of all the stuff that grown-ups are going through. And the last thing I remembered was the last time I had gambled. We had a guy on tour that will remain anonymous that was booking, and I remember laying out $600 on a hotel room bed after betting on football for a couple of weeks. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. This isn't working out well for me. So, but yeah, we had our own bookies. We had, we had our own characters that did anything and everything they could to scratch a buck. As everybody pretty much knows, the PBA Tour wasn't and still isn't all that lucrative. I mean, nowadays, the top players in the world they're making some good scratch, but back in the early '80s, I mean, you did whatever you had to. I mean, you bowled extra pro-ams to make an extra $50 and for the week, and you did whatever you had to do to scratch out a couple extra bucks because there wasn't a whole lot of money to be made back then.
And I'm sure there had to be a few nights late at the bar, and like I said, the stories from the European Tour guys all have that sort of, it had circus. I'm picturing it ahead of a little bit of it, right? Like the circus is coming to town.
Oh God, there's been numerous liver transplants since the early '80s, and there was plenty of back in the day. There's plenty of Bud Light drank and everything else, and it's like the a-holes fracking fluid. Plenty of that was consumed, we used to call that Jägermeister, the a-holes fracking fluid, because that's what happened as soon as you drank that, you became an instant a-hole. So
I can only imagine. I'm going to ask you two major championships, back to the seriousness of professional bowling. Did you you won a major championship. Did you take majors that week? Was there kind of like you hear golfers talking about how they try to peak for a major? Did the pressure feel a whole lot different? Or once you got into tournament mode, it's just like another tournament and you have to treat it that way? How did you sort of look at majors? And then what is that feeling like accomplish something like that where you win at the highest level at your sport and you prove that week you're the best in the world at it? It's got to be one of a feeling.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is. For me, since I didn't win but one major, the majors were for me just like another tournament. The difference was that the format was different. There was more games, more time involved, and just a longer week, a bigger grind. But for me, it was like, yeah, it's another tournament. It's like I made several shows at the Tournament Champions, and I never really looked at it like, okay, if I win today, I win another major. I was always, it's just winning the tournament. And, back in the day, we had two types of formats. We bowled 42 games for the week to get to television, or we bowled 56 games for the week to get to television. And that's not including pro-ams and practice. And that's, we were geared and trained to bowl that many games in less than a week. So for me, it was like, okay, this is the national championship. I got to bowl this many games today instead of the normal, our regular format, and it's just going to be longer, and you got to stay more patient. And I mean, at the end of the day, the objective was always the same. It was to get to the show and try to win. And so, yeah, I never went into a major more jacked than a regular event. And I know that probably doesn't sit well with a lot of folks, but every event that I entered, my goal was always the same, and that was to win the tournament. So I don't know why I would put more emphasis on a major than I would a regular event, because that would mean that the other events really didn't matter, and all I wanted to do was win a major. You know what I'm saying?
That's why I think it's an interesting question of how some people view it one way or the other, right? You get some tour players that, they absolutely, they try. Majors are what Tiger kind of focuses on. Other times you have players that, hey, if I'm pegging it, it's the most important time is right in front of me right now, and I'm trying to win. It could be the John Deere Classic. It doesn't matter. They're there to win. They're not there to screw around.
A W is a W.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a win's a win.
Well, then the second part, does it hit you later when you do win a major? I mean, the respect from the other players, does it take a little bit of what you have accomplished so you get through that gauntlet, you got the trophy? Is that one of those things where I've talked to like Mark Helkavecki on this, and it's like the next day it sort of hit him, what he's accomplished? Is that sort of the feeling that you had too? Does it take a little bit to sink in that, you've accomplished really something special?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of your career, it's always nice to look back and reflect on and say, well, I won this many times and this many majors. I think during your career, you don't really look at it that way. I think you look at it like, all right, well, every outing I'm trying to win, and excuse me. Again, it's all about going out and trying to win each and every week, but on the other side, it's nice to look back and go, well, I won this many times and this many majors. It was a nice run. I think major championship wins also define a career, because everyone in our sport and in golf define the greats with how many majors they won. And so I think that's why they're talking about Bill Monty now as possibly the greatest of all time, because he has 12 major wins, and the next two guys closest to him only have 10, and that was Earl and Weber. Pete Weber. And so now, here's Jason Belmonte at age 36 with 12 majors. He's done it all in 10 years. He's made, I think it's like he's bowled, 56 majors in his career, and he's made the show 29 times.
Has he?
He's made the show in more than half of the major championships he's bowled, which means he had a chance to win the title in almost 30 of those events. I think he's finished in the top 10 in 75% of those events. So his major championship resume is unmatched. And I think that at the end of the day, when you look back at his career, when so many careers are defined by major championship wins, I think that's why all of a sudden he's in the discussion for greatest of all time. Now, with that being said, when you do bring that up, the first thing out of most people's mouths are, well, two different eras, or three different eras: Earl, Walter Ray, and him. So it's a lot of argument. There's a lot of argument there and a lot of room for argument, but at the end of the day, he's the winningest player in major championship history. And I think when you look at golf, they talk about Tiger and Jack, and Jack's got more major victories than Tiger does, yet Tiger is tied with the all-time wins in PGA Championship history. So, and I think Tiger's only, is he 3 or 4 back of majors from Jack?
He would be 3 back. He's at 15. Jack's at 18.
All right, so he's 3 back from Jack in majors, but he is tied for all-time on the all-time win list
with Snead.
So now,
right?
where's that argument? Is Tiger the greatest? Is Jack the greatest? Or are they going to flip it and go, well, two different eras?
My gut is because of back to the golf question, and I'm with you on the importance of majors, and I think bowling's going that way, like you're saying as well. But you asked people in the business, Jack or Tiger right now, they'd still give a slight edge to because of the importance of majors.
There you go.
Right. So bowling and I think golf are very, very much the same. I don't know if bowling's always been like, but it's always been like that. I don't think majors were as important as they were in 1960 as they are now. Right? Like, and it's
well, they always said, on our tour, they always said that majors counted for the year they would count for a win and a half. So if you won one major and 2 other tournaments, you won 3.5 events that year. And if another guy only won 3 tournaments, then that player that won the major and the other 2 events would have an edge in the player of the year voting.
I think that's flipped around now. I'd have to imagine on the golf side, right? Majors are, if you have one major and one guy won 4 times or 5 times their regular tour events, I think, well, that's a tough one, but I think the nod's probably going to the guy with a major and another win, on golf side at least. It's an interesting argument. I've had Sean McKeel on, right? He's got 1 win on tour, but a major. And then the question always is, how many wins would you trade for 1 major? I always think it's an interesting debate from a golf standpoint. Is it 6?
Right.
Is it 5? Is it 7? I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, boy, golf's majors are. I don't know if I'm Sean McKeel. I don't think I'd trade my major for 5 wins. I think I'd want that Wanamaker on my shelf.
Yeah, I think if you ask him, he's probably more than content with the major.
I would, yeah, and we've actually we've talked on the podcast of which he doesn't know what that would be, but my argument take the major, right? Like you're a part of history.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think so too.
Well, let's talk a little bit of golf. So bowling and golf kind of go hand in hand, right? Like there's a lot of golfers bowling. A lot of bowlers who golf, especially like in the Midwest or where the weather's not great out east. Like it's always kind of been a back and forth sport. So kind of go hand in hand together. So I'm surprised you also have a huge passion for golf. But how did you kind of get started in golf, and when did golf take over? Not that you always have passion for bowling, but another sport that you're as passionate about almost as what you did in your bowling career. I know how much you love to play, and how'd that come about?
Oh, I started chopping it around when I was about 21 or 2. Yeah, it was just, the passion for golf was instantaneous. And then, as the game progressed, figuring out how many similarities there were with golf and bowling. And I remember when playing on tour with the other touring players, how one of the main comments were, "Oh my gosh, his golf swing looks so much like his bowling swing." And it was more of a kind of a tempo rhythm kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like you never saw a PBA player with a long, smooth, rhythmic swing in a short, choppy golf swing. You know, it was like the swings kind of mirrored one another, even though they were two different sports. And so, you know, I continued to play and got better and better and better by just playing, and then really got into the equipment side of it. And, you know, just continued to kind of basically just played a lot of golf. And then moved to Orlando, joined a private club where there's nothing but aspiring professional golfers and Korn Ferry Tour players and PGA Tour players and LPGA Tour players, and just playing a course that was so demanding, and then that forced you to play better, or you know, you just you might as well go join the Muni. And that plus my love of equipment, and understanding how the importance of having equipment that actually fits each individual, just kind of furthers everything that I do in golf. And you know, I mean, you know, obviously bowling is my life, golf's my passion, but there's so many similarities with the two.
Did you get pretty good pretty quick? Because I have to imagine you know how to move your body. You have to have a good hand-eye coordination. Did that, a lot of people who start, did the skill set get pretty, was that transition in 22-year-old starting to play down to, I know you still played about a 0. Was that pretty quick, that pretty close to scratch?
No, it took a lot. It actually took a while. And partly because, you know, when I first picked up golf, I was a full-time player on the PBA Tour, so it wasn't like I was playing a lot of golf. It was kind of just whenever I could, because I was actually bowling pretty well, so that took up 90% of my time, and then it was like, oh, every once in a while, let's go play golf. And then, but it wasn't until I got into my 30s and moved to Florida when I really started to play a lot of golf. And, you know, with all the golf courses we have in Florida, that's when I really started to play a lot. And that's when I started to take it serious and take lessons. And I remember I had an instructor back in the day by the name of Mark Wood, who's Dudley Hart's, he's actually related to Dudley Hart. He's married to Dudley Hart's sister. And I'm trying to think of the ex-PGA, or the guy that used to be on the PGA Tour that Mark Wood coached. It'll come to me here in a second. But Mark Wood was my instructor back in Fort Lauderdale when he used to run Blockbuster Golf, which was owned by Wayne Huizenga. And they used to teach over at the old Rolling Hills course, which was the course that they filmed Caddyshack at. So there's some pretty interesting stories.
Yeah, small world.
Right? So Wayne Huizenga came in and he bought Rolling Hills and turned it into this magnificent private club back years ago. And so it went from Caddyshack to Grand Oaks. And Mark Wood and his people, they had the training facility out front. And so Mark was my, probably my first real coach, my first real swing coach. And then I left Fort Lauderdale and moved up north to Orlando, but continued on and then joined the private club, and that's kind of the short version of the golf story. But after I couldn't compete anymore on the PBA tour for a number of reasons, and then I had a short stint on the PBA 50 tour, but due to knee surgeries and bad knees, I was unable to compete. So I really started diving into the golf and really working on my game. And at probably age 53 or 4, really kind of focused just on that. My job was full-time television and studying the greatest bowlers in the world. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was playing golf. I was working for Storm, and then when I wasn't working for them, I'm playing golf. So,
right.
Storm is for your listeners, number one bowling ball manufacturer in the world out of Salt Lake City, or out of Brigham City, Utah, and I've been with them for 20 years. So, it's again, the crossover is very similar. It's very easy to go from one to the other. I think there's a lot of really good bowlers that are really good golfers and vice versa. I know Cal Quebecia, PGA Tour winner and major championship winner, is a hell of a bowler. We've talked a lot about bowling. We follow each other. We've got our contact information, and I know that when Cal goes bowling, he's using Storm equipment, and we talk a little bit of bowling every now and then, and a little bit of golf every now and then, and so yeah, it's a pretty seamless crossover of the two sports.
Who's some of the other PGA Tour players from the Orange Tree down to be friendly with, and how much do you enjoy competing against them in sort of money game, and have you noticed that you're pretty good under the gun because you do know how to deal with pressure? You've dealt with it on the bowling side. Does that transition in golf as well, where you can kind of control the nerves, and you've been in these moments and you're still competing, but it's a little bit different, but you've been there before, per se? Oh,
absolutely, and they all know it. And so that's why, I make a pressure putt. None of them are surprised. They're like, he's a Hall of Famer. That's all I hear. He's a Hall of Famer. Robert Gomez is a big name that we have out there. Bubba Watson was a member out there for a while. Jim Renner, who finished second at Pebble Beach a couple years back. Andy Pope, who's made the cut at the U.S. Open like the last 3 out of 4 years. He's on the Korn Ferry Tour. We've got Christina Kim who I just played with today. Let's see, Perrin, I can't remember her last name. Perrin, oh Lord, she just finished third at the Australian Open, 2 months ago. She's a member out there. Oh gosh, Amy Yang. There's just a slew of them. So, we have money games Tuesday through Sunday. So we had a big money game today. I got paired up with 2 other guys. We actually won the back, but played with Christina Kim. And, it's funny how a regular Joe playing with Christina Kim, they're all of a sudden their underwear is so far up their ass they can't swing, whereas I love it. I mean, I'm just like, man, I love watching good golf, and I want to show her that I can hit it a little bit. You know what I mean? It's awesome. So again, I think that's just that player's mentality.
How many did she have to give you each side? Or go square?
She doesn't give me any because we weren't playing against each other per se. Now, she had a partner that we played a little doubles match, but we had 15 players that were playing in this one game. So we had 3 5s that went off. And then within our 5s, her and this other guy played me and my buddy. We played him straight up. And we lost the press on the front. We lost 1 bet on the back. And so we lost the press on the front, bet on the back, and the all day. But Christina had 5 birdies for 70. And I had 2 birdies for 74. And my buddy had 3 birdies for 75. So, we ended up losing out. Her partner crapped the bed, and if it wasn't for her, they would have lost. So it was all her. And so we just played a best ball 10-10-10, and but again, it's not the money, right? It's just grinding against a professional golfer. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah, no, it's exactly that's who wouldn't want. I mean, if you love golf, you challenge, right? I would love that challenge.
Absolutely.
Like, let's go do it, and let's see how you stack and how good does your game hold up. And it's like you said, I agree with you. Watching professionals, if it's women or men golfers, and they're so good, they make it look so easy. I always actually play better around kind of better players. You can get the rhythm from it a little bit. I love watching really good golf up. I think it actually helps. You just sort of can see what they do, and I don't know. To me, it's sort of a effect to sort of watch somebody play that well. I think it kind of rubs off on tempo and mimicking it, right? You're trying to mimic the best in the world, how they do it. So that's so cool. You get to play. I've had Robert on the podcast as well and talked to him a few times outside of it. He's a really good guy, and he can still play pretty damn. I'm sure every now and then there's a 64 or 65 he lights it up with Gomez down there as well.
Got game, sure.
Absolutely. You're not in the PGA Tour for 20 years, like, not be able to get the ball in the hole when it needs to be.
Right. Exactly.
What young players on the PGA Tour do you like following, and what do you kind of like those guys? And if you got to be friends with any of those guys as well, of the younger generation, is there any, as an athlete, do you kind of like watching these other guys from afar and like the way that kid rolls, or I can see where this player is going to be really good for an extended period of time?
Did you say PBA Tour or PGA
Tour? As a PGA Tour, do you kind of watch him like, honestly, I like that kid?
Honestly, I like one guy. I mean, I appreciate so many swings and talents and whatnot on the PGA Tour, but I'm really a one guy. I'm a one guy fan, and that's Rory McIlroy, and for a number of reasons. One, because obviously his physical talent, but two, and most importantly, the way he carries himself and what he does outside of golf, and what he does for charity and what he does for children, and the way he carries himself, I think is just truly amazing. I think he's the classiest dude out there. And so if I were to be given the golden ticket and I could go inside the ropes and follow one guy for one round, it would be Rory McIlroy.
It's hard not to like his game. He's a really good guy outside of the golf side of it, too, as great as he is. He's supposed to be a really good human being. So I've heard the same things, that he's 24/7.
Wouldn't surprise me any.
That golf swing, man, I don't know if anyone in the world drives the ball any better. It's something to behold. I was going to also ask you, too, on the golf coverage, and I'd love your take on this. And there's been a controversy this year on CBS, and DL3 is not bringing it to the table like people thought, and NBC is not as strong without Johnny. If you could change anything in the way golf is broadcasted as somebody in television, is there any two or three things that you would try to improve upon for the watching it at home from your perspective?
Oh God! I mean, I thought that it was a mistake for CBS to get rid of Bob Costas and what's his name?
McCord.
Mustache.
McCord.
McCord.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand that for the life of me. Those are my two favorite announcers on there. Faherty's good. And I like his twist and his fun. I just think that golf is just, it's just such a serious sport, or at least made out to be that way all the time. But then again, look at the money that they're playing for. I mean, look at what's at stake. So how could you not? But yet then you have the Phoenix Open, where it's a gigantic party, and then look at how the players react to that. You know what I mean? It's like, see, look how much fun they're having. Excuse me. Because the environment is completely different, right? So I think that a friend of mine said it best a long time ago. He said golf is a little pompous in that, it's a little hoity-toity because of so many factors. But I mean, you look at the money. There's so much at risk. There's so much at stake that it's kind of hard not to be that way. So could you imagine if 90% of the golf events were like the Phoenix Open?
Well, do you think it would Phoenix Open? But do you think that would take away from the Phoenix Open? Or do you think more of them should just be like the Phoenix Open?
Oh, no. I mean, I think that it would make golf more fun to watch. I think it would be more fun for the players. I think it would be a lot more fun. But again, now you're messing with tradition and kind of going against the grain, and the purists would hate it. Just like when Rob Stone came on board on our sport and started calling the four-bagger or 4 strikes in a row, which is called a four-bagger, he started calling that a ham bone. And, oh, my God, what a firestorm he started with that. And then turns out half the fans love it and half the fans hate it, but they all talk about it. So he was brilliant in coming up with that and starting that conversation. I just think that I mean, what, honestly, I don't think golf needs a whole lot of help because they have so much corporate sponsorship behind the sport that who cares? As long as the sponsors don't go anywhere, once the sponsors start worrying about the ratings, then you have a problem. But the sponsors could give 2 craps about the rating because they'd rather be affiliated with the PGA Tour and professional golf than they would the PBA Tour or ratings. They don't care.
No, I with you from that standpoint that the companies are for the most part getting out of it what they need to get out of it. I would like to see. I liked like Ben Wright when he was some guys with her who were a little off or characters per se, or might say something half crazy. Not
right.
online, but like all the same pedigree of their background, and I kind of liked it when they had, different kind of people in there. I thought I know like in the tower they always have to have a Azinger or a Faldo. I think like Brandel Chambly would be great in the tower. Now I know he would be crucified because he won a major, right?
That dude's got a bullseye on his back.
Right, but wouldn't it be great to see what does he say on Sunday afternoon?
Well,
It'd be interesting.
It's like the networks love Johnny Miller because Johnny Miller would say things that nobody else would say. But
correct.
Some of the stuff that he said was a bit outlandish. I mean, he basically said that every 20-foot putt a guy had was an easy putt. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, bro. And then when the player missed it, Johnny was right there to jump on top of that player, and so the networks and everybody loved Johnny because he wasn't afraid to bash any of the players. Well.
Right.
I think that there is a right and wrong way to go about doing that. And it seemed I was never a Johnny Miller fan. And it just seemed to me that he waited for an opportunity to tell you that shot sucked. He couldn't wait for that, right? Whereas for me, if a player throws a bad shot, I'm going to be the first one to tell you that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it or try to make something out of that shot that it wasn't. But I think instead of going, oh, my God, that was freaking horrible, you say, hey, listen, that wasn't his best. And he'll be the first to tell you that. But it seemed to me that Johnny always waited for that an opportunity to rip on a guy. And that's what I didn't like about Johnny Miller. I liked the Ben Wright. The Ben Wright was fun. I like Gary McCord. He's fun. Brandel Chambly, he's kind of that same guy that, he's looking for that in to rip people. He ripped Tiger. He ripped, what was this latest that he had to apologize for?
Oh, that was the PGA of America teaching philosophy, and then he's already somebody all the time, right?
Right, the teachers.
Right.
Yeah.
Brooks Koepka has had it right, he's had it basically with everybody.
Right.
But half the people love him, but half hate him, but they watch him. It's like the Howard Stern thing, right? So golf need a little shot like that in the arm on the broadcast, or hate him, right or wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love listening to Jim Nantz. I think Jim Nantz is great. The NBC broadcast with Hicks, I'm not a huge fan. But I love listening to Jim. And love his intro, hello friends, and just listening to him calling the Masters year in year out. But again, this takes me back to my buddy saying how pompous the sport is. You got Gary McCord, who at one Masters said the greens were bikini waxed, and that's why they're so fast. And then the Masters bans him from future telecasts.
I think for life, right?
I mean,
it was just done.
For life. From doing Masters shows. I'm like, okay, you couldn't take him to the side after that broadcast and say, hey, listen, bro, we like to kind of keep it a little bit more on the religious level for this event. Would you mind just cutting it? No, instead they ban him for life. Come on, bro.
Yeah, then you watch, like, I just had Tony Johnstone on from the European Tour Sky Sports. Like, theirs is very, like, subdued almost, they just golf kind of talk, and then they got voices with the English accent. They'll put something in there, and I actually like watching that too, like, because they don't overdo it. It's just sort of like you're kind of watching 2-3 guys doing the broadcast who really know golf, putting in their little comments every now and then between tee. I actually kind of like the subtlety of how they do it. It's different. It's a different vibe. But I think those guys have a unique way of, or maybe it's just starting off your day Saturday morning and putting the European Tour on and hearing Lawrence's voice kind of coming over.
Yeah.
Like they have a different way of doing it too. I don't know. I think eventually there's some changes. Do you get like a Colt Knost in hell, when he played the tour, but he'd be kind of like a younger Gary McCord, kind of half crazy, and everyone loved him. A great guy.
Yeah.
Does it go kind of that direction? Ask you too, as a follow-up, when you criticized a player and you have to do it with class today, have you ever had anybody get mad afterwards? Then you have to say, "Look, I just have to call it like I see it," or do the players understand you have a job to do and it's nothing personal?
I've never had a player say anything to me. I had a wife call me once.
Oh God, that would be worse.
Because I said her husband was one-dimensional.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So this fruitcake decides to call me the day after, and I'm like, what? And then I said, well, he is. And then she started doing the backpedal, and I one of the things that I learned a long time ago when I first started doing broadcasting is as long as you speak the truth, there's nothing anybody can say or do. And this guy was one-dimensional, and this is kind of in the beginning of where players were starting to learn how to go straight when they needed to go straight, and they could hook the lane when they had to hook the lane. And, in golf, it's like shaping it both ways, right? And
right.
This guy only did one thing. He stood left, threw it 2 miles an hour to the right, and hooked the entire lane. And I said, on television, well, he's one-dimensional. He's doing what he likes to do best. And she took offense to that. And I told her, I said, tell me what I said wasn't the truth, and I'll make it good, or I'll apologize for it. And she, no, Bob, and I said, don't ever call me again. So
you got a job to do, and like I said, if you do it the right way, and you still have a relationship with those players, I'm assuming. I always thought it'd be one of those things where they realize, look, we're in a big sport, competing for some good money against, and this is just a bit. Congratulations, don't take it personally, like it is.
Right.
If you're going to get on that stage in front of millions of people and be on television, well, you're going to get the glory, and then sometimes if you're not performing well, you're going to hear it, and that's just going to be a part of the deal. Interesting. How the players or relationships kind of happen with that from somebody who's on the other side of it. I always find it an interesting kind of back and forth of guys describing their relationship with players on the PGA Tour, what you do with the bowlers, but it's always interesting. I got a couple more for you, and I'll get you out of Dodge here. These are kind of quick hitters. So the first I have to ask, what is the better bowling movie, Kingpin or The Lebowski?
Oh, Kingpin, because I'm in Kingpin and I'm not in The Big Lebowski.
So what? Who did you self in Kingpin? I've seen Kingpin multitudes of times.
I actually lost to Bill Murray in the semifinals.
Did you get to spend time with him?
Hung out a little bit with him and Woody. Not a lot of time. I wouldn't say a lot of time, no.
But you lost to the Big Earn, that's correct?
I lost to Big Earn McCracken, yeah.
Yeah. It is a great flick, though. Lebowski's pretty good, too. But since you are, all right, we'll let that one go.
Love it.
Best or the best 3 golf courses you've played in your life, architecturally, or the club, whole atmosphere. What was the 2 or 3 best, and what did you love about those courses? The most that makes them stand out in your mind.
All right, so not in any order, but best 3 probably Pebble, which would include Spyglass, Firestone, and the one in Kohler, Whistling Straits.
How hard was Firestone? Is it just a brute?
Well, what's interesting is that we played Firestone South, and we played it like one set of tees up. And this was like the year that Ola Thobel shot 62 with a wooden driver. And we looked back at the back tees, and we're like, he shot 62 from there.
Is that the year he won by like 12 or something nuts?
What's that?
Is that the year he won by like 12 or 15 or something insane?
Yeah, I mean, it was something crazy. He shot
Yeah.
62 in a round. I don't know if it was a final round, and you just kind of look and you go, yeah, there's no way that I could ever do that. And not to mention the length, but Firestone's narrow. Every hole's tree lined, and you got to hit it straight. And he shot 62 on a par 70 course that I think at the time was a par 70 at 72 or 7,300 yards, and he's hitting a persimmon driver.
Yeah, and a ball that didn't go anywhere. Yeah, 62.
Right.
Thanks for coming, Ollie.
Like if you smoke it off the tee, you hit a 270, right?
Right. Well,
and this guy shoots 62 from back there. It's just nuts.
In his prime, that man could play some golf. Yeah,
no doubt about it. He was a hell of a player.
Last one I got. What golf courses are on your wish list that you're hoping to get out and play that, if you think it might be achievable, if you had another 2 or 3, okay, this one's on the bucket list. I got to go do it at some point in time. Which ones are sitting out there for you?
I think that they're all in like one country, only because I've never been there. I've never played golf, but I would say, going to Scotland and playing a couple of the British Open rotation courses would be pretty cool. Obviously St. Andrews is bucket list, and then Carnoustie. There's also a course that a lot of people have never heard of that's not in the rotation called King's Barn, which is right on the ocean. They call it the Scottish Pebble Beach.
Yeah, I've heard that's amazing. I've heard
if you go online and you look at the course, it shows you hole by hole. It's amazing. So
yeah.
I would say that, I've played enough courses in the States. I'd like to go England, Scotland, Ireland. I'd like to go play some courses over there. That'd be pretty cool.
Well, I've not talked to one person that I've in the Southern England part of it. I have not done the Scotland one yet, but every person you talk to who loves golf that goes to Scotland is just, they can't wait to get back, right? And I also heard like the coolest thing you can do if you can get on there is go to Muirfield and you can play in their like money game afternoon with the
no way.
Like, yeah, I heard it was like the coolest experience ever. You do lunch, like a proper lunch, and then you go out play in like afternoon match and like alternate shot for 1-9, and if you're lucky enough to get in there, I've heard like that just to hang out at Muirfield like as a member for a day.
Wow.
Oh God, I got to get over there at some point in time. I know I gotta. We were thinking about this year, but obviously it's all looking at maybe this fall, but it's probably not going to happen with travel restrictions. But I want to get over there. I'm with you. I want to get over there before I'm too damn old and the skill set goes away, and I'm hitting 7-wood from 170 yards. I want to try to over that if I can. So.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that one. Well, thank you so much, man. I've been looking forward to this. Hope we see some bowling back, in all sports there, and stay healthy and keep working the game a little bit, and we'll be in contact.
Thanks, Jay. As always, the clubs are wonderful. I shot 69 last week on Thursday, so another sub 70 round with my irons. Love the sticks. Get a lot of comments on it. Hey, what are those? It's pretty cool. And I think you guys are doing great stuff up there in Illinois. And keep up the great work. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for making some great equipment, bro.